happily, joyously, triumphantly miserable, accursed. Welcome to Mattamy Athletic Center for Curse of Politics, live at Maple Leaf Gardens. This is a goddamn historic venue, people. Elvis Presley played here. The Beatles played here. Muhammad Ali beat the shit out of George Chiavello here twice. And you know, I was giving Christine credit, but she kept promoting this thing as Queen played here. Queen played here. Who gives a fuck about Queen? Elton John played here. Elton John played here almost as many times as the Leafs in the 70s and 80s, and certainly played it better than they did. The very last Stanley Cup won by the Toronto Maple Leafs in 1967 happened here.
Not an applause.
It's not an applause line. They shouldn't have won. They beat the Canadiens. It was a fluke. It doesn't matter. But tonight, here in Maple Leaf Gardens, it's Teneycke. It's Reid. It's Leichnitz. And it's me, Herle. After which you can conveniently head down to the grocery and choose 173 varieties of delicious cheese, or maybe buy a ham.
In this economy?
I'm not talking beef. Nobody's talking beef.
It'll be the Abbey Lewis Center soon.
I want to thank our host for tonight, Rubicon Strategies, and our live event sponsors, Bruce Power, Enbridge Gas, Novartis, Toronto Metropolitan University, and the Mattamy Athletic Center. So let's get to it. Woo! Jordan, you just came back from Victoria and the BC NDP convention.
Yes, I did.
Right? Are they all pro-resource development now? Like, what's going on? Just give us a, no, it's not our thing, but let's just talk about this a little bit. Because it feels like a big change has happened there.
Yes, I would say not all for sure, but as you can appreciate at any NDP convention, and certainly at a BC NDP convention, usually there's a bit of contention, around those types of projects, as what we've seen announced last week, even the transmission line, but certainly LNG. But yeah, it was very interesting. So I would say the takeaway was first and foremost, of course, around the review vote. EB passed quite comfortably. And I think that was a very big improvement from what was feared. So the solution to the BCGEU strike and a lot of outreach was done to labor, and that clearly paid off for him. But yeah, like to the resource development, it was interesting. There was for sure debate, but it was relatively muted compared to what I would have expected to see. So I think there's certainly a sense that there's a shift happening on that, and and they're governing, and they want to be a part of that.
You know, Kory and I are old enough to remember when the NDP in Saskatchewan used to regularly be against uranium mining. Like they would, every convention, they would have a resolution and they would pass against uranium mining. The government always ignored it.
What was Calvert's line? He had a famous line on that, didn't he? It's like basically worse than driving cars or something like that.
Yeah. So we are holding this event while a vote is going on in the House Commons about a confidence vote on the budget. And I think based on the drinks we had before this, I think a lot of things based on the drinks we had before this, but one of the things I think is that we all think the government's going to survive the vote tonight. We'll find out, I guess, partway through this show. But one of the things we thought would be interesting to do anyway is to talk about what it would be like if an election did happen now. If there was an election, and it would be somewhere around Christmas time, I guess, mid-December, when the vote would be. I looked at 338.
Killing me.
Was that me?
Yeah.
No, that was just the visceral response to your Christmas election.
Some people
to
feel
tell the guys in the
election,
hockey helmets that I have a pacemaker.
Still demystifying this week, what makes TELUS's new sovereign AI factory so special and so unique to us in Canada? Sort of a 2-for-1 demystification special here, Herle Burleyites. Let's start with the big tech news. TELUS is super chuffed, proud, delighted, all those glorious adjectives apply here, to be using the NVIDIA accelerated computing platform throughout the factory. In fact, they're the first North American telecom to become an official NVIDIA cloud partner. TELUS and its customers get access to the NVIDIA AI platform and enterprise software, as well as industry-leading training and collaboration with NVIDIA experts. So, cutting-edge global technology for Canadian businesses, but under Canadian control. I'll come back to that part in a minute. NVIDIA accelerated computing is at work behind the scenes, powered by those trillions of computations per second NVIDIA GPUs I told you about last week. Thanks to NVIDIA's industry-leading innovations, Canadian researchers now have the AI infrastructure to process massive amounts of information quickly and efficiently, creating new opportunities for homegrown innovation. I promised I'd come back to the sovereignty piece. It isn't about where components are manufactured. It's about who controls your data and operations. TELUS's collaboration with NVIDIA is as a technology provider. They provide accelerated computing resources, but all data storage, processing, and operational control remains with TELUS under Canadian jurisdiction and laws. Think of how Canadian hospitals use foreign-made MRI machines. The sovereignty comes from Canadian ownership, operational control, and jurisdiction over how that technology serves Canadian innovation. Ultimately, it's the best of all worlds. NVIDIA's cutting-edge technology is integrated with TELUS's renewable energy-powered AI factory, giving our innovators a competitive edge on the world stage, protected by a rock-solid, sovereign by design Canadian shield. I looked at 338, the website, and it said the Liberals were ahead of the Conservatives by a point or two, by maybe 4 points in Ontario, pretty big lead in Quebec, a tie in British Columbia. I mean, basically the public opinion data looked like pretty much of a dead heat between the Conservatives and the NDP. The vagaries of the way the votes are distributed led 338 to conclude that the Liberals had a 76% chance of doing as well or better than they are now, and the Conservatives had about a 25% chance of doing better than they are now. Scott, if there was an election right now, what would it be about?
I think it would be 10 days about why are we having an election and playing blame game on that. I think the next 3 days would be about the controversial decision of the NDP to bring Jagmeet Singh back as leader. Kind of 1980 Trudeau-esque kind of.
He's living his best life now. Leave the poor man alone.
You know, and it'd be so exciting, and there would be this parade of enthusiasm. I think it would start out by being about that, and then I think it would be about leadership, and I think it would very quickly descend into a collision between Carney. He hasn't given us results. He has failed the referendum on are you the right guy to take on Trump? That would be the Conservative argument versus Poilievre. You haven't changed. You don't want to change. You brag about not changing. Your underwear even, and so you have to change. But maybe I'm descending into my argument. But I think it would quickly be about leadership, and I think that's why, even though the polls are at a dead heat, I mean, the obvious factor is what's the party standings, and the second question is what are the leadership standings? And Poilievre looks like he's an anchor, not a kite.
What do you think, Jordan? What is the substantive issue that might take over the campaign?
Well, I think you'd see it divided again in a very similar way that we saw in the spring, which is if you're older and you own your own home, then it might be about stability. It might be about economic leadership that you feel safe with, right? In which case...
You think Dave is voting Liberal?
Maybe. So I think you would see a similar split in terms of what the election is about demographically. And the challenge, I think, there, for the government is that, and while I would largely agree with the chances of the respective parties for forming government there, it's that you do now have more proof points for Carney, right? Like, we know a little bit more about how he's going to govern. And we know a little bit more about what he's doing to ratchet up the expectations and how he intends to get where he says he's going. And it's all a very slow path, right? It's a very, we're talking about making these investments now, funneling them through largely the private sector, and then these are years in the making. So people will have to make their judgment about whether that will actually impact their lives on a timescale that they care about. So I think I would say if you were headed into an election right now, particularly coming off this last budget, not ideal. Not ideal if you're the Liberal Party, because that was not a budget, as has been discussed widely on your other show, that really had anything that in the window for voters, right? So I wouldn't want to go into an election with that budget. This was a budget that I think Carney enjoyed and was satisfying for him in terms of what he wanted to do, but not really one to tee you up for a campaign.
Right. So, exactly 30 years ago today, something happened that the stock analysts on Bay Street predicted would fail. It was the day that our sponsor, CN, went from being an underperforming Crown corporation to a publicly traded corporation. In a sense, you couldn't blame the naysayers. Crown corporations didn't exactly have reputations for efficiency or profit. What the street didn't know, though, was the true extent of the root and branch overhaul that had been carried out leading up to the initial public offering under the leadership of the then CEO, Paul Tellier. It was an utter transformation, a railway that began early in the 20th century as the consolidation of 5 smaller railways facing insolvency was about to emerge as an example to the industry. Suffice it to say that once the CN stock went on sale, the snark and the giggles soon stopped. Not only were the naysayers wrong, they were spectacularly, thunderingly wrong. That IPO became the biggest and most successful in Canadian business history, raising about $2.2 billion. And CN began its metamorphosis into what it is today, one of 6 Class 1 railways in the United States and Canada, employing nearly 25,000 railroaders, operating a network stretching from Halifax in the east to Vancouver and Prince Rupert on the west coast and down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Anyone who bought into that IPO 30 years ago, when CN stock was offered at $27 Canadian a share, has done very well indeed. The stock has split multiple times since. Meanwhile, the railway continues to push the frontiers of safety and technology, delivering for shareholders, clients, and stakeholders. And as I've noted here repeatedly, the Canadian economy moves on CN tracks more than ever. It's been an awesome 30 years. It has been the story of Canada. Kory, how does the leadership review play into the Conservative calculation on this? I mean, do they want an election now because they think this is actually a really good time to beat the government, or do they want an election now because they think it's the best way to avoid the best way to cement his leadership?
Well, I don't think his leadership's at risk right now, so I don't think it would factor in very much. Look,
you don't, eh?
No, I don't.
Not in caucus?
Well, caucus is a different beast, but I think within caucus, I think he's safe, very safe right now. But I would say, there's probably, more people with concerns in caucus at any given time than you're going to find in a partisan convention, such as the one that will be occurring in Calgary. Look, it's, 0.01 or 0.001% of the population that will actually be in that convention hall casting a ballot, or not even the electorate, of Conservative supporters.
Right.
It's a tiny percentage. That'll be a very curated vote, and I think he'll jump over that bar easily for a number of reasons. One, he did reasonably well in the last election campaign, although there were clearly issues. I think we've talked about
He lost,
those.
though, right? Did he lose the...
That's what I heard.
It depends.
So I think that's one in the L column.
It depends who you
right?
ask, clearly. Are you asking him?
It's rewarding points for effort these days, I think.
But look, and there's no one running against him, right? To normally when you see somebody have a tough time in a vote, if you're Joe Clark, there's Brian Mulroney in the wings with a campaign team, organizing to try to have that not happen. None of that's going on out there. Or if it is, it's so below the surface that they've told no one. The people who are thinking they're running, they haven't told their wives or families yet. So I don't think it really factors in. I think, there are people within the Conservative Party, maybe even Poilievre, who, would go tomorrow, like in the sense that they, feel like they were robbed. And if you're listening to the conservative narrative and what Poilievre has to say about what's going on right now, it's very much a narrative of that Carney pulled a bait and switch on the electorate, and that he's not living up to expectations, and that basically you've got a bill of goods, and everyone who voted Liberal should probably just look in the mirror and apologize to the country. It's very much a sense that you made a mistake.
You were fooled.
Yeah, you were fooled, right? Like that's essentially what the narrative is.
Isn't
that's
that wrong?
out there.
Isn't that? That doesn't make sense to me as the conservative campaign pitch.
I mean,
Well, I'm not saying it makes
typically
sense.
blaming voters for a bad choice.
The question
Why
is,
would he just ride affordability like a fucking horse?
Well,
No, but he is right. When you look at what they talk about, they
I know.
are mad still about the outcome.
But
So
they're
that's-
yelling at the mirror, not
I
voters.
thought the question was, is the leadership vote going to play into their decision to support the budget or not?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is no, because I don't think its leadership's at risk.
Right.
And I think, at the core of that leadership team, they want to relitigate the last election to a certain extent with more facts on the table. And I think as they would present those facts, it's a disappointment in the pace of things that Carney's done. And, with respect to Trump, like the inability to get a deal. So I think that's what they want to talk about. And nowhere in that is, a leadership review vote really factoring in my view.
Right.
But he's in much greater danger from his own caucus than he is from the review vote.
Well, that's true of every leader forever, I think.
Yes.
So the situation is that if you look at 338, the parties are close to tied in public support. And then if you look at the polling organizations that ask about who ought to be the prime minister, they consistently reflect about a 20 to 25 point lead for Carney over Poilievre on that scale. Generally, the history of politics is that those two numbers reconcile each other before Election Day. Like, not many people vote for a party whose leader they don't think would be the best prime minister. So by the end of an election campaign, either a lot more people would have concluded that Poilievre should be the prime minister instead of Carney, or a lot more people are going to vote Liberal. How do you see those two factors the gap on leadership in a competitive environment is as large as I've ever seen it in my life. So how do you expect those two things to get rationalized?
Yeah, well, I don't know that they will. And I think that that's the challenge for Poilievre. We've seen after the campaign, he had an opportunity to remake himself a little bit, right? To take some lessons or, even adjust his strategy in a meaningful way. Well, as we saw last week, where he apparently believes he's running against the media, he has elected not to do that. And you can see it reflected in his numbers. His approval numbers are actually declining after the campaign. So I actually would say that I don't think there's any guarantee that that gap would be closed in a race, because what he's doing is turning people off on that question.
Right.
But it animates his supporters, and that's the paradox in it, right? It's very animating for a base of conservative supporters, but it's a hard ceiling for his ability to grow. And he's clearly, I think, picking a lane on that, but it's one that would limit his growth.
What do you think, Scott? Do you think there's any room for this guy to... he seems a man out of time and place now. He seems like a guy who was seemingly very relevant a couple of years ago and not terribly relevant as an individual today. At least that's the kind of impression I get.
He doesn't. The reason I don't think the Conservatives should win an election right now is that he continues to not fit the moment. As much as affordability has reasserted itself as the number one concern to Canadians, the reality is we all know what's going to happen. If an election comes tomorrow, right? If it begins tomorrow, we all know what's going to happen. Donald motherfucking Trump is going to say, "How dare the Canadians have an election and it not be about me? I think I will barge in and make it about me," right? So we know that will happen. We know that, and part of what you guys are just talking about, you and Kory, will manifest in that Poilievre won't be able to help himself, saying, "You got sold a bill of goods. You were wrong. This is your chance to fix your mistake." And nobody wants to hear that. His winning play is, right? This prime minister doesn't do enough on affordability. He introduced a budget that didn't do squat on that sort of tried to re-engineer the economy to a 30,000-foot level. And there's lots of room for him. So could he win? Could he? Yeah, if he rode that and really registered on it. But Trump will barge back in and yank the campaign back to that question. People will continue to say that Carney is better than Poilievre, notwithstanding 6 months of, well, we don't have a new deal, because people don't actually scorecard it the way Poilievre does. And Poilievre himself won't be able to resist the temptation to make it about a leadership battle between the two of them. He doesn't just want to win. He needs vindication, absolution. And I think that would be a real challenge. In 2015, May 19th, 2015, I don't know if anybody, and someone needs to yell out at us when this vote happens, but if there's a tie vote tonight and the Speaker has to break it, well, that's what happened on May 19th, 2015, when we were in government, when Paul was the Prime Minister.
2005.
2005, I should say. Pardon me, yes.
2015, Trudeau was Prime Minister.
Yeah.
No, but in 2015, wait a
I
second.
have worse
I'm
memories
30,
about 2015.
I was following
think you
you
got
for
the
a bit.
numbers
Actually,
wrong.
May of 2015, Harper was Prime Minister.
That's right. Yeah.
Listen,
Yeah,
fuck off.
no one was having fun at that point.
And Tom Mulcair was going to be our next PM.
Tom won't
at that
care.
point.
Had it by the, you had the world by the tail.
You don't really know anything, do you?
May 19th, 2015. 2005.
Come on, Joe Biden, pull it together. Let's go.
Anyway, Medicare's dead. We killed it. That's the first thing, and then the second thing. And then
I don't know what Scott said there, and I don't think Scott does either.
Here's my question. You stop making fun of me and my age. We won that vote on a tied vote, and that night we piled into the market. We got blasted. I got drunk and danced on a giant speaker with Belinda Stronach. It was a lovely, wonderful thing. I might have made that
there's an
last
image.
thing up. But in retrospect, we wish we'd lost that vote. Because if we'd had an election then, we would have won it. And I do wonder if one of the perversities of tonight, I've been thinking about this all day long if there's a tied vote. Will we think to ourselves, will Carney think to himself, shit, man, I would have liked to have had that vote at that time.
My role this week is to bring clarity to a key point of fact, because there's been some confusion about it, and life's confusing enough. Industrial carbon pricing, the single most important policy lever we have to cut emissions and create a clean economy that can compete worldwide, costs Canadian consumers next to nothing. The day-to-day impact on your pocketbook is imperceptible. This from our sponsor, the Canadian Climate Institute, who've done extensive research and cost modeling on the policy. Here are their findings, as simply as I can lay them out. 1. Industrial carbon pricing has almost zero impact on household costs. It has essentially no impact on the price of your groceries and the agricultural sector. Food prices are increasing because of the negative impacts of a changing climate, not Canadian climate policy. Why is that? Well, that brings us to point 2. Industrial carbon pricing only applies to the largest emitters of greenhouse gases, like oil sands facilities, steel mills, and cement plants. It does not apply directly to consumers. Costs for consumers are virtually nothing because industrial goods have just a tiny impact on the price of finished consumer products. So, carbon pricing on the highest emitting steel plants would only add 12 cents to the cost of a refrigerator and under $3 to the cost of a pickup. Not only that, but many of these products are exported and sold at international market prices, which Canadian policy doesn't affect, meaning that the relevance of industrial carbon pricing to Canadian consumers is virtually zilch. And finally, number 3, industrial carbon pricing is designed to be low cost for business. At worst, for example, it adds roughly the price of a single Timbit to each barrel of oil. One single Timbit. On top of that, these systems are designed so that companies that perform better on emissions actually make money by selling credits to other companies. That's a powerful incentive that keeps costs low and drives big investments in projects that slash emissions. Much more on all of this at climateinstitute.ca.
Time is the biggest enemy of this government, right? Like time for the expectation mismatch in terms of results. And so I think that there is an argument to be made that if you want to go early while people are still kind of reserving judgment, while voters are still feeling.
Carney should have stood today in the House of Commons and said, thank you, Elizabeth May, for that question. Climate change my balls, I don't care. Vote any way you like. See you on the campaign trail.
We'd have to breathalyzer him, not her.
You just want to hear Elizabeth May say that.
Yeah.
I want to hear Carney say that.
Yeah. Well, after a few drinks, I'm sure Elizabeth May might oblige. But look, I think the campaign that the Conservatives should be doing in the frame that they should be placing us in is probably more around, party and team. Like as we've talked about a bunch of times before, I'm a big believer that the Conservatives need to make an Avengers movie and not a Superman movie. Wow. And I think the concern that of how things are framing up for them right now is it's still too much Poilievre versus Carney. And I don't agree that whoever's best prime minister necessarily wins. If that were the case, then Broadbent would have been prime minister several times. So it's not, and it's not like it's not,
the way God intended.
But and I don't ever recall Harper being Mr. Congeniality, and that was his selling feature. So likability is different than best PM, but there is an interplay between these things. But clearly, I think when the Conservatives are the party is polling ahead of the leader, you want to talk more about party. You want to talk more about team. You want to broaden that out. Like I would say in 2018, when we fought a campaign against each other, David, at that time, Ford was mostly being defined by his brother's record. And bringing in Christine Elliott and Carolyn Mulroney and other people helped to give voters permission to do what they wanted to do, which is change the government.
Right.
And so broadening the team out, it can be a way to address that problem. So I think there are ways for the Conservatives to deal with that. But I agree if it is if the campaign is a referendum on Carney or Poilievre, well, that's advantage Carney, clearly, based on all the numbers that we've seen.
But why would it be? Why would it be? Because, we've sort of talked tangentially in this conversation about, the Liberals haven't done that much on affordability. No, let's be clear. First of all, on all of the top issues on the matrix, the Conservatives have a better record
except health care.
Seen better than the Liberals. So whether it's immigration, whether it's the economy,
crime,
all those issues, they're better. The things that are at the top of the list, with the exception of Canada-US, which is a declining, maybe it would insert itself in here, but is a declining factor in our politics. Like, if I was the Liberals, I would, and I am kind of, but if I was, I would be nervous about this. I would be nervous because I don't like this.
Absolutely.
I don't like the issue set at all.
But would you have presented that budget?
Introduced a budget that doesn't address it at all. So now you got to run on that budget, and now you got to say, so I don't think your concerns are legitimate. And let me tell you that this affordability thing is not people who are a little angry that they can't afford to eat steak as much as they want. This is a big fucking thing that has people right up the income scale going to food banks, right? Reporting that they're food insecure. This is a major thing for a big part of the population, and the government didn't address it at all. I'd be so nervous about going into an election in that environment.
Well, and we're in a bit of a moment where the idea of, the elite sort of knowing better about, like, trust me now, we're going to go on this long journey together and your life will get better in 5 to 10. It's a very tough thing to sell. And so that's why I think this budget was especially remarkable in its failure to touch on those things. And it, particularly for the generational divide that it deepens for the Liberal vote. That is a really big structural problem for them. And you heard them talk and frame up the budget as a generational budget, which it was not in any way. Like, the speech to students was the only maybe generational part of it, and all of the dad jokes about the internet. That was it. There was no actual effort to acknowledge the reality that younger people in Canada are living in today. And I think for sure that's a very weak position from which
Well, they got
to
a lot
start
more debt.
campaign.
They got a lot more debt that they're going to have to pay for.
But for what?
Yeah, right. Yeah, like, look, but I think what you're saying, though, David, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like the Conservatives would win if but for the leader,
right?
In terms of what the polling is saying. And so I guess what my case is broaden out the leadership from being just about one guy and be about a team of people. Like, we went through a very similar thing in the, from 04 to 06 with Harper, where, we changed a lot of things. And, I think it would have been a much more difficult prospect for the Conservatives in the 06 election if they hadn't brought in Jim Flaherty and Tony Clement and Peter MacKay, and you're bringing in all these folks, John Baird, others,
and
profiling them, and that is what I mean when I say an Avengers movie. If it's just this solo head-to-head. It's the worst possible framing for the Conservative Party in today's circumstances.
But Jamal Jamani ain't Iron Man, okay?
Yes.
Well,
but that's actually But hear me out.
You act like, they are the Avengers. They're not, right? So that's one issue.
Yeah.
The second thing is, come on. We all know, and this is why I continue to think maybe the Liberals will have regret that they don't trigger an election now or let themselves fall into one, is because I think inevitably, right, they have, notwithstanding your point about all those issues, which is so compelling, David, but I don't think that their opponent can help himself from making the election about himself. That will be true of Poilievre. He's not willing to say, all right, let's put the team in the window, and I'm going to, I mean, this is about vindication. And I just...
But I want to pick up your team theory, though, Kory, to test that a little bit, because I think this is a different case from what we saw with Harper. Like, there is a team around Poilievre, but, like, it's the same sort of attitude, right? It's replicating the same likability problems.
Well, those people were brought in.
To be honest,
nobody
has any idea who would be the finance minister.
Well, I think in fairness to them, like, you are seeing them do mainstream media. You're seeing Lanceman out more. You're seeing, certainly Scheer can do as much as he wants because nobody likes him. So there's that. So I do think that you are seeing more of them. But I think the problem, the problem is that the more of them is all in that ilk of Pierre Poilievre brand style of really combative, negative conservatism.
Hurley Burleyites. Over the past couple of months, I've been telling you how our sponsor, Interac, is shaping the future of payments in Canada. Now, let's take a moment to zoom out. Last year, Interac set a new 3-year strategy with an ambitious North Star to lead Canadians to digital prosperity. That's a big bet. So what does it look like in practice? For Interac, it means modernizing national payment infrastructure with real-time account-to-account movement of money. It means fighting fraud and keeping Canadians' data and dollars secure. And it means making sure every person, business, and community can participate and thrive in the Canadian digital economy. And Canadians are responding. In a national survey this year by Leger, Interac ranked as the most reputable brand in Canadian financial services. In 2024 alone, it powered more than 1.4 billion Interac e-transfer transactions and nearly 7 billion Interac debit transactions, all on Canadian-made and Canadian-controlled networks that reflect our country's core values and priorities. Interac understands that digital prosperity goes beyond technology or financial gain. It's about building a secure, inclusive economy where Canadians can work, spend, build, and plan their futures with confidence. Since 1984, they've helped Canadians move their money safely and reliably. Now, Interac is helping define how we move forward as a digital nation together.
Well, you can recruit people to be candidates that aren't a part of the current team, but there are people in that caucus that could be highlighted more, for sure. However, like I think there's a bigger problem with it as well, because I don't think, to your point, Scott, about Trump, weighing into the campaign, certainly did in the last election. How did Poilievre go from pushing 50% in the polls to basically losing 10 points of support? Actually, more than that at a certain point in the campaign. He lost a lot of people who were going to vote for him, and it was largely on the Canada-U.S. issue. And he also did an amazing feat of, I think, largely collapsing the NDP vote out of fear of him becoming prime minister. The more he looks like Trump, the more the NDP do not resuscitate, and the more the voters that he lost when he was at his high water mark don't come back to the Conservative Party. And if you look at who those people are, and people talk about the Conservative base, we lost the Conservative base as it traditionally has been, because it's 55-plus males is like the strongest demographic typically for Conservatives. Yeah. We lost them. And we typically, when we win 55-plus females too, and we lost those, very convincingly. So those are, I think, attitudinally and historically conservative voters. Why are they not voting conservative? It's because they have a pathological hatred of Donald Trump is a big part of it. And then I think a view of comparison of resume of Pierre Poilievre versus Mark Carney, and the resumes don't compare very well for voters in that demographic. So how do you fix that? Well, it has to not be a CEO competition. It has to be an executive team competition. The Liberal Party is not popular. Their team is still largely the Trudeau team, not popular by and large. So compare teams, broaden it out. If it's Poilievre versus Carney, it also looks very Trumpy.
Yeah, but
I think
you don't got to convince us.
Yeah.
We agree that would be the correct strategy, I think. Make it about the team, go hard on affordability, try to force Carney. Say to Carney, you can't even talk about affordability. You have no basis to relate, and he'll get defensive and talk about it, get sucked into it, all those kinds of things. But you don't have to convince us, Kory. You have to convince Pierre Poilievre. And last week, he went to the microphone, and if the iron rule that he should know after this past year is don't look and sound like Trump, he couldn't have looked and sounded more like Trump if he was high-fiving Epstein. It was a full-fledged deal. So,
Well, as long as it's not like his relationship.
Is that like a quota of Epstein times?
We are not even halfway through this thing. I've got a thing about drawings that I'm going to get to later.
So, Scott, if the government falls tonight, what should Carney say tonight or tomorrow?
It's interesting. I think you should make it about leadership. I think he should say that this is a selfish partisan decision on the part of the Conservatives, and Canadians need to decide who they trust to lead them. I mean, you just want to, don't outthink it, don't oversmart
Context, do you reinsert the Canada-U.S. thing, or do you not want to rely too heavily on that?
I think you want to do that, but I think you probably want to insulate yourself by also trying to put some bona fides on. If you're going to make it about leadership, then round out your leadership. It's not just best to do those things, but also to protect. Here's the number one thing actually I like about the Ford government. Okay, and I'll give Kory and our buddy Dennis Matthews is here in the audience, right, a lot of credit. When you see Ford, when you see those ads, what do you see? You see the word protect. You see protect Ontario. I think Carney uses the word protect too seldomly. I think we should be pounding that word. I think that's the mood of the country. I'm anxious. It isn't quite fully rooted, the risk, but I can feel it coming, and hit the word protect, protect, protect. So I'd be doing that, and then broaden that to not just protect your job, but also your income, and also we're going to protect your ability to be able to afford the things you require to get through on a day-by-day basis. I'd start to seed that ground, try to make that part of his leadership. I wouldn't just make it about Donald Trump and Canada-U.S.
He's selling stability. Right? He's selling stability against a risky choice.
I assume that was Dennis clapping.
Well,
reaching for his majority.
But this is part of your point, I think, as to why there's such a generational divide. Stability is great if you've got a house and you've got, you've got investments, you're more mature financially. you've got something to protect. I think the revolutionary spirit that you're seeing, not just in Canada, but like in many parts of the world right now with younger voters, is they don't have those things. And they feel...
Wait a second, because this gets shorthanded a lot, but I find this kind of important.
Sure.
Right? Among men, older men voted for Carney, and younger men voted for Poilievre.
But this is the
Among
point.
women, they all voted for Carney, of every age. There's no age group of women in which more people voted for Poilievre than voted for Carney.
Right, but that's
women don't like Poilievre
but
that
that's
much.
overwhelmingly true for every conservative party in the Western world. So like I don't view that as a huge outlier.
There was a time when he did have some younger women coming into his vote coalition, but they left.
Right. Well, when he was at 50, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right though.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
I'm just saying it's not generational. Young men were with him, young women were not with him. Right? He needs to find more votes somewhere.
Sure, but what are the easiest votes to get? It's people who have been voting conservative most of their life, or most of their adult life. And if you look at what group the Conservatives, where'd they lose that 10 points, that's where they lost it. It wasn't a problem with younger men. That revolutionary spirit, I think, is carrying on. I think like that base of the Conservatives, which he's attracted, and I don't think it's just support levels. He actually got them to go to the polls. Trudeau in 2015 got them to go to the polls on weed, but I'm
going to tell you which group had an easier time dating, by the way.
Right, sure. But I think
Smoking
there
enough weed,
is...
you don't care if you're dating.
Yeah.
I'm happy to stay at home and watch Netflix. But, man, we're spending a lot of time on Poilievre, and it's fun. But Carney does have some vulnerabilities.
Well, because he's the story in a way, right? Because they should have won the election.
Yeah.
And they should win an election now. The Liberals have been for too long, right? Carney's a shitty politician by any historical definition, right? They should be winning. And I mean, it really comes down to their big choice that they have to make as a party, which is, can they win with this guy? And if they can't win in this circumstance, after the Liberals have been in for 11, 12 years, and then, you have to ask yourself whether you got, that was a big fucking blown thing. Like, we sort of have gone past it. I'd like to have a podcast on whether the 1980 election or the 2025 election are the most remarkable and unanticipatable elections in Canadian history, because it's one of those two.
Well, but they sure don't share that analysis, right? Like, you would have to see it as a failure. And I think the big takeaway for Poilievre and the team immediately around him is that they don't see it as a failure.
Which is why, if you're the Liberals, you want to have this election now, notwithstanding all these issues, because they don't seem to have embraced that lesson, because he seems hell-bent on making it about himself, and because he'll repeat the same mistakes. So, hey, man, let's dunk on this 8-foot rim.
Right.
The following message is brought to you by Unsmoke Canada. Not all nicotine products carry the same risk. Smoke-free alternatives, like heated tobacco, vaping products, and nicotine pouches, don't burn tobacco or produce smoke. While not risk-free, evidence shows they have the potential to be significantly less harmful than cigarettes. Yet, Canadian regulations restrict access and limit communication about these alternatives, keeping adult smokers in the dark. Sweden has accepted this science, embraced smoking harm reduction, and driven smoking rates below 6%. Canada has the tools to do the same, but it requires political will. It's time to align regulation with science, expand access to smoke-free products, and empower Canadians to make informed choices. The evidence is clear. The opportunity is real. Canada can be smoke-free. Learn more at unsmoke.ca.
I don't know. I still think that if Poilievre could find a different way to present himself, the issue set is so good for him.
Yeah.
And in this affordability crisis, Carney's so easy to stereotype himself in that way, right?
Well, but I think we should talk about Carney a little bit, because I think there's, I think part of what Poilievre's narrative around this, I don't think it's best coming from him, but like there is an issue there. The elbows up narrative, he is not done, and if I think there's a hallmark of this government and of him, it is raising expectations, through the stratosphere, and then under-delivering. And I don't know about you guys, but like I've never seen that work well in politics, and certainly not work well over time.
Right.
And I think we're going through a version of that now with the major project stuff, where it's going to be all that. It happened with the budget that's being voted on tonight. It's going to be transformational. It's going to be a budget of the century. Blah blah blah. Not really, right? So there is this gap between rhetoric and expectations, and then what happens. And here's another way to solve Poilievre's gap on leadership: is wait a little longer and see what happens with Carney, because if it continues going the way it is, I can't see him getting more popular. I only see that needle going one direction, and it's down. And we can argue about what the rate of decline is, but it's probably decline.
But don't I want to harmonize to be honest with you, I don't really agree with what you just said. I agree with the strategy, I agree with the impulse, but I don't agree with the method. Like, I think the attack on Carney being about you're not elbows up enough is a mistake, because I think people give an enormous amount of license to it's so impossible to deal with this crazy bastard down there. And the expectations thing is absolutely correct, right? They say every day, come watch us, I'm going to make a man levitate. And the man falls, and they go, we'll be trying again tomorrow at 10. And then...
No, we will do it tomorrow at 10.
And people go, it seems like voters go, oh, fuck, it's kind of hard to make a guy levitate. I mean, I don't know. Come back tomorrow. But to me, when you know that you have all these issues, especially affordability, the attack has got to harmonize something that seems true about Carney with that issue set. And it isn't elbows up, and it isn't, as, Poilievre seems to want to say, like, he can't deliver on the big problem, he can't deliver on it. To me, the attack is he doesn't care about you. Yeah. He doesn't get you, and he doesn't care about you.
I think it's not very complicated. Like, this guy is deeply interested in economic structures, in calming the bond markets, and like relatively uninterested in the fact that half of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck.
He's manic about getting AI to take your job.
Like,
that's his.
It is pretty damning as a structure. There's a lot to work with there, not just for the Conservatives,
so
but for the Democrats too.
In this circumstance, Jordan, wouldn't the NDP caucus? I'm not making a joke. Wouldn't they see this as?
But I might.
Wouldn't they see this as a pretty good opportunity? I mean,
to go for an election.
To go for an election. I mean, yeah, it could go bad like the Creditiste in 1980, but it's also in this isn't it perfect for the NDP to make an argument? This guy, whom you want to be prime minister, needs somebody to remind him of the fact that people can't make the rent. He needs somebody in his world who reminds him, and that should be us.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's better to do that when you have a leader, typically, in this line of business. But you're not wrong about the structural setup of the campaign. I think there is quite a lot of space on the left to make that argument. But, you need somebody who can go toe-to-toe at the leadership level. And I know Don Davies would agree with me that he has no desire to lead the party into a campaign. But you're right that I think that the NDP is less averse to an election than you might think just looking at their balance sheet. Like, there is an argument to be made that when you went in and your popular vote in the federal election was like around 6%, like they're already floating, up around, let's say, 9-10, right? They're going to do better across the board, but they don't actually even need to do better across the board. They need 5 seats, okay? So there is a version of that campaign that you run. It's bare bones. You target those 5, you get back to party status, you get yourself a new leader in March, and you build from there. Right. And I don't think that's the craziest argument. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see them not bend over backwards tonight to be the ones to shoulder the budget vote.
But I think the issue, like, I hear this argument all the time about the NDP, that the Liberals are now crowding the center. They've moved considerably right of where the Trudeau government was, and that should open up all the space for the NDP. But I think what we saw the last campaign, and I think why the NDP numbers are still, lower than they have been historically, is the electorate is being polarized over Poilievre and whether you want him to be prime minister.
Yeah.
And
It does not help.
And it's like, it's like, talking about, whether you should vote for Ralph Nader in an election squaring off against Trump, right? Like third parties in those sorts of polarized elections get crowded out.
Right.
And I think they'll be crowded out again, as it is. Like, it's so close. One of these two people are going to be prime minister, and it's not whoever is the leader of the NDP. And the passions that you see Poilievre in particular stir up amongst progressives are so strong. They're so violently opposed to this guy leading that trumps all these other concerns, and it's,
I still think you could probably get your 5, right?
Sure, like maybe but I think it's probably something like what we saw in the Ontario election campaign. Like the NDP way outperformed where the polling showed.
Yeah.
And where did they do it? It's where it was like they were clearly the anti-Ford choice in that riding. And
It turns out the best way to
there
beat
are
strategic
ridings-
voting is by winning more.
Yeah. Well, so I've heard. But there are more than 12 ridings in the country where you could run a campaign where the natural non-conservative choice in a contested election is the NDP member, not a Liberal. And I think reframing the election campaign in that way, like the NDP spent an astronomical amount of fucking money in the last campaign, and if you want to talk about what was the ROI per vote, like that is probably the worst in the party's
don't run that
history.
equation.
I'm not bored. I'm not checking my phone because I'm bored. Does anyone know what happened on the vote yet?
170,
170.
166.
What did Genereux do?
So it wasn't that close. One NDP abstained.
Does that mean some conservatives abstained, other than general?
How about that's such a fuck you from Genereux when he's
seriously.
abstaining. Oh, we wish him the well. I mean, we're
Well,
best
what, you
friends.
expect to be working with them after what we...
Well,
just saying.
Poilievre was out there saying every conservative MP opposes the budget, but
Yeah.
did not say every conservative MP would vote against the budget.
I think that Genereux is a conservative MP under great sufferance at the moment.
One might think that.
Yeah.
So, hey, let me switch topics for just a second. Yahoo News. This is from Yahoo News. Chris Knight.
Great.
Oh, it's the
Wait.
National Post.
Speaking
Same
of
thing,
generational
Yahoo News.
divides.
Anyway, Prime Minister Mark Carney was booed during the coin toss at Sunday night's Grey Cup game at Princess Auto Stadium in Winnipeg. Though he later noted, "We were cheered as well." The negative noise started from the crowd as Carney was already on the field and being introduced by the announcer at the stadium. Would you put him in that position?
Yeah.
Yeah, why?
Well, I think you can't hide, right? There's always going to be those difficult moments and difficult regions, but you can't look scared to be out there. And at the end of the day, I think for most political leaders, it's not the booing that's necessarily the problem, it's how they deal with it that tends to become the focal point.
Well, the legend has it, I don't know if it's true or not, legend has it that Doug Ford was so shaken by being booed
This
at
is
the
the
Raptors
example.
party that he brought in Kory.
Well, and we can all see how that worked out for him.
He took his hoop down.
Maybe if it gets really in your head, you float at 53%.
Way to get more
so.
popular. I've always liked the Ronald Reagan maxim on this, that if you're going to throw the opening pitch of the ball game, you go out with a kid in a wheelchair if you're a politician, because no one's going to boo a kid in a wheelchair. So I think it depends.
Very nice.
It depends how you do it.
Nice.
If you're going to go out with the commissioner of the CFL, you're going to get booed, right?
My favorite was at the tractor event in 2019 where he blamed Andrea Horwath and the NDP for the booing, like as though they were just there doing the booing.
Well, gotta spin this. I thought his interview in studio was actually quite good for him. I would probably cut it off there.
Right.
Like, why go out on the field? Like, you're just asking for trouble.
I don't know, man. Like, I think these moments, sure, you could try to avoid them, but I don't think that it harms you if people boo you. I think it harms you if you look like a suck and a thin-skinned baby pants. And so I think it is, I'm right where Jordan is. Like, I think it's like, you go out there, if you get booed, you laugh, you're the first person to bring it up, you make a joke about it, and like, just, it's the people who are like, I can't laugh at myself, and I can't take it. You know, like Polyev, if he got booed, it'd be like, well, you know, it's because CBC must be here, right? The crowd, all the CBC cameramen put Riders jerseys on and booed me, and you're like,
I'm going to suggest though, like, if you're going to a CFL game in Western Canada, where the Rough Riders are playing, there's a very good chance you're going to get booed.
The game's in Winnipeg, Prime Minister. Well, that's pretty good territory. Yes, but Winnipeg's not playing. Saskatchewan is.
Yeah, and you know, it's an easy drive. Yeah. Like, it's not. Look, just, you know, I think the Liberals did historically well in Saskatchewan for a federal election campaign last time, but not very fucking well.
Right.
Like, it's still very limited support there.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, does anybody have an idea how long we've been up here?
I don't know.
What is
I feel like we're.
It's like it's like late. It's like 7:05. But when did we start?
Okay.
It's been an hour?
Yeah, it's been an
All
hour.
right, well, that's long enough. That's long enough.
Liberate these people.
We want to drink. Everybody wants to drink. Gordon Pinsent, please assemble the crowd.
Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats. The Hey Yous are about to begin.
All right,
Okay.
Scott.
All right. My Hey You, given the setting, and my Hey You comes with a question, Herle. So my Hey You is Hey You to Lanny McDonald, who I think might be the only person ever put on a Leafs uniform that I liked. And my question to you, Herle, is name a Leaf you loved.
Loved.
Like, would have, like, ripped the helmet off and fucking, like, kissed, rubbed the hair and said, my God, you gentle creature.
I don't have that. There's nobody. Frank Mahovlich when he was a Hab.
Frank Mahovlich.
I don't fucking.
It could be a Hab.
I don't fucking like the Leafs. Like, I don't.
Thomas Caberlet was also a Hab and a Leaf. You know, it could be something like that.
He was a bad Hab.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah, no, I don't have one. And
David is not playing your
I'm
games.
shocked that you have one. Lanny McDonald.
Lanny McDonald. Who doesn't like Lanny McDonald? Big stash. Swanson dinners. He was going to pull
From
the
Saskatchewan too.
thing off the fridge.
Yeah. No, I'm fine. Whatever.
All right, fine. Be like that. Be like the Prime Minister who can't, like, who gets booed and gets all pissy. He can't laugh.
Your Hey You is to Lanny McDonald.
Yes. We're at Maple Leaf Gardens. I'm wearing a Hockey Night in Canada jacket.
Yeah,
like,
you turned into Brian McFarland.
And Zach. In fact, Dave Hodge, I got to throw my pencil in here.
All right. Jordan.
I'm lost. I'm on the wrong podcast.
Trying to be more relevant. Exactly. I'm on the wrong podcast. We're all lost.
Okay, well, it's parent-teacher interview season, so if anyone's a parent, it's one of the joys of this week. So I was forced to think about the state of the education system more than I normally want to think about because, you know, it's a bit like staring into the abyss. But it's come to my attention, and so this is a Hey You out to Minister Calandra, that in the throes of trying to go after the school board trustees, that the plan is now that we're going to hire and we're going to appoint people who I think it seems have really not very much education experience and pay them $350,000 a year with an expense account.
Ron Taverner? Is it Ron Taverner?
I don't know. Like, do you want a job?
He's only 90.
Do you want a gig? Because I think they might be taking applicants. Anyway, so we're gonna bring these people in and we're gonna pay them to do that.
I was an underachiever in the school system. I can help them
well,
with that.
you would be qualified then. But because we don't actually want parents to talk to these people, we're then going to put in these like parent resource, like another layer of government, which, my God, if I know anything about our conservative friends, that should be offensive on its face, but here we are. And so I'm here to save Minister Calandra some money because I have kids in school and my kids are in a school where it is so overcrowded, their photocopier is in the stairwell. And this year, they actually, they had to add some porta potties to the portables so that they could meet the occupancy requirements to put in more portables. Okay, and my 4-year-old is in a class, a JKSK class, with 27 other 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And I'm not sure if you have met 3, 4, and 5-year-olds like in a group, but like with 2 adults, like that is not enough adults for that. So I'm just going to save the minister.
But they're not in my house, as long as they're not in my house.
Well, maybe we should send them to the minister's office, because the problem is not so much the school boards notwithstanding some bad apples. The problem is that we are chronically fucking underfunding our school system. And so that is my hey you. Minister, you can take that $350,000 and you can just actually fund a fucking classroom.
Wow. I suppose you like that better than Lanny McDonald.
If you put Paul Calandra in charge of something, you don't really care how well it goes, do you?
I think that is a very accurate way of... are we talking about fixing elections? Or
yeah. Oh, come on.
Oh my God, now he's offended. We finally offended Kory.
Yeah, you look like I'm not even going to engage.
No, I won't dignify that. Not dressed as a character from one battle after another. I won't dignify that comment.
So I'm going to do a sports one, too. I want to do a hey you to all the people out in Riders Nation.
Yeah.
It was a big win last night. But this is a politics podcast, so I just want to point out to everyone who doesn't know this important fact, this piece of CFL trivia. The Riders have never won under an NDP government. I'm throwing it out there, and I don't know. I think there's a lesson to be learned in that.
I know, because they've governed for like 40, 50 years.
I know, it's like a long
I fear
time.
that the lesson may be more about the Riders, but...
No, it's not true. I consulted Brad Wall on this very
did you?
thoroughly,
Okay.
and he assures me that it's not possible.
Well, my hey you is only partially about politics. It's about this jersey, and it allows me to say something about 2 people that I probably won't get another chance to say something about. Terry O'Leary thinks this is the ugliest shirt that has ever been made. And she's in very bad dudgeon whenever I decide to wear it out. But to me, it's the most beautiful thing that was ever made. Because 2 really wonderful things happened to me in my life. One of which is I got to know one of my absolute idols, Ken Dryden, through politics. And Ken was doing a lot of work on head injuries in sports. And I introduced him to somebody I knew through my brother, William, a guy named Jim Hobson, who was a former Rough Rider who'd been made the first CEO when they decided to turn it from a volunteer organization into a professional organization, was made the first CEO of the Rough Riders, absolutely pulled them out of the ditch, both in terms of compete on the field and in terms of their commercial prospects. They became the richest team in the league. They became one of the most successful teams in the league. Anyway, those 2 guys got together, and when I turned 50, they gave me this jersey for my birthday. And it was absolutely my proudest possession.
It's a work of beauty.
They're both gone now. But here's to Ken Dryden and Jim Hobson, 2 great people.
Sure.
Excellent.
And with that, I think we're all going to meet you upstairs for some drinks. And thank you again so much for coming. Thanks to the sponsors of this podcast. Thanks to the Air Quotes team and Christine for putting it on. Rubicon for sponsoring. You 3 for being here with me. As always, it's a great fun. Lanny McDonald, my fucking God. Anyway, let's see you upstairs. Thanks for coming.